Today, you'll hear 3 creepy Tinder horror stories. We explore the strange, unexplained, and downright scary encounters people have encountered when dating in real life. From paranormal entities to abduction. Story 1. It was a creepy and amazing adventure that started with an ordinary evening on Tinder. A young guy named Jake decided to check out the app in search of new dates. He was lucky, or perhaps unlucky, enough to be matched with a girl named Alice. Alice was an attractive and mysterious woman. She had deep brown eyes and long black hair. Her profile was filled with cryptic quotes from old books and images of ancient rituals. She had asked Jake out on a date at an old abandoned mansion that she claimed was a place of mystical energy. Jake was inquisitive and agreed. The evening was cool and darkness was descending on the town when he arrived at the mansion. Alice met him at the door, and he saw that she was dressed in a strange robe and holding a candle. They traveled deeper inside the mansion, and Jake began to feel that something was wrong. It was cold and dark inside, and a strange odor permeated the air. Alice led him into a room where there was an ancient table with shards of glass and candles illuminating symbols on the walls. Here a strange ritual began. Alice began whispering unintelligible words and spinning the candle, creating ominous shadows on the walls. Jake felt his fear increase, and he realized he was in for something much bigger than just a date. Suddenly, other people burst into the room, also dressed in robes and holding candles. They began to sing a strange choral chant and move around Jake and Alice. The symbols on the walls began to glow with sparkling lights, and scary figures lit up the room. Jake felt like he was becoming part of something horrible and incredible. He tried to get out of the room, but the door was locked. He screamed, but his screams were drowned out by the chanting of the ritual. After a while, the ritual ended, and Jake was left lying on the floor, unconscious. When he came to, he was alone in the old mansion, and there was no Alice or strange religious figures anywhere. He made his way out of the mansion, frightened and lost. He told the police about his horrible adventure, but no clues or evidence were found. Alice and her mysterious followers had vanished as if they had never existed. Jake never used Tinder again and was careful about who he chatted with online. The story of that strange date was a reminder to him that the virtual world hides secret and dangerous sides, and they can be much scarier than they first appear. Story 2. Emily had always considered herself an old soul. At just 23 years old, she often felt disconnected from others her age who wanted to party every night and live recklessly. Emily preferred staying home reading or watching old classics in black and white. She dreamed of finding someone who shared her introspective spirit, a true partner for thoughtful conversation and adventures to feed her curious mind. One lonely night, Emily decided to download Tinder to see if she could find someone interesting to talk to. As she swiped through the faces and bios of local guys, one profile caught her attention. Damon, 25, was strikingly handsome with intense dark eyes and a chiseled jawline. But it was what he wrote that intrigued Emily. His love of philosophy, ancient cultures, poetry, and exploring mysteries of the metaphysical realm. Emily felt an instant kindred spirit in Damon. They matched right away, and conversation came easy between the two old souls. They stayed up late messaging about their favorite obscure theories, legends, and existential ideas. After several nights of paragraph-length messages, Damon suggested they meet up at a location special to him, Whispering Caverns. He described the remote cave system as emanating a profound mystical energy. Emily was wary of going somewhere so isolated with a virtual stranger, but her thirst for adventure persuaded her. They planned to meet at the caverns that coming Saturday night so Damon could share this marvel with her. The day arrived, and Emily set out just before sunset. She followed winding back roads out of town and into densely wooded hills. As the paved road turned to gravel, then dirt, doubts began creeping in, but she ignored them. The dirt road ended at a small clearing with Damon's car already parked. Emily pulled up next to it, took a deep breath, and got out. The woods here were eerily silent except for a faint whistling sound she couldn't place. Damon emerged from the tree line, looking just as broodingly handsome as his photos. He greeted her warmly, then turned towards a nearly hidden trail. Emily hesitated only a moment before following him into the dense forest. After a 15-minute hike down an overgrown path, a sheer rock face loomed ahead. Emily could just make out the yawning black mouth of the cavern entrance. Damon squeezed inside without hesitation. Heart pounding, Emily followed. Just within the entrance, the temperature dropped sharply. Goosebumps prickled her arms as the whistling sound reverberated against the cave walls. Damon produced 2 flashlights, handing one to Emily. She shivered, looking into the impenetrable darkness ahead. Every instinct told her to turn back, but Damon's reassuring smile calmed her. They walked deeper into the cavern, leaving all light behind. The only sound was their footsteps crunching on the gravelly floor and the low, omnipresent whistling. The path twisted and turned unpredictably. Emily gasped as they stepped into a massive chamber, so large the flashlight beams couldn't reach the ceiling or far walls. Jagged stalactites and stalagmites added to the menacing atmosphere. This is where Damon stopped and sat down on a large, flat rock. He told Emily he comes here often to think and meditate. Emily sat beside him, hands clasped tightly together. She couldn't relax being surrounded by such heavy darkness. After chatting for some time, Damon suddenly went silent. Emily turned to see if he was ok, and was shocked to find his face inches from hers, wearing a twisted grin. His eyes were pitch black and void of humanity. Emily leaped up, but Damon grabbed her with an icy grip. This close, his handsome face gave way to grey pallid skin and lips blue from cold. Emily screamed and pulled away, but this was not the man she met that night. She turned and fled into the darkness, stumbling over rocks and formations hidden in the shadows. The whistling sound became screeches echoing all around her. Emily ran blindly with no sense of direction. Finally, she saw a glow ahead signaling the cave entrance. She burst into open air, just as a bitter wind swept the trees. Gasping, she looked for the trail, but clouds had blanketed the moon, leaving her lost in darkness. The screeches and whispers surrounded her as she felt her way through brush and branches. Emily's panic rose. She had to escape this place, and the evil thing inside that wore Damon's face. At last the woods thinned and Emily found the dirt road. She ran every step back to her car, fearing the creature was behind her. She drove away quickly, not stopping until she was home safely in her room. Shaken, Emily knew that cavern had been a lure to trap her, and whatever sinister entity pretended to be Damon was likely still inside. She deleted her Tinder account, unwilling to risk another encounter born from the internet. Story 3. Mark was bored. It was just another Friday evening spent alone in his apartment, searching for a shred of excitement. He aimlessly scrolled through screens and sites until finally opening Tinder. Mark rarely had luck on dating apps, but swiping through selfies and bios was a decent distraction. He was about to put down his phone when a particular profile caught his attention. The girl had black hair, pale skin, and intense green eyes. In her photos, she wore dark clothing and occult-looking jewelry. Her bio simply read, "Seeking Darkness." Her name was Liliana. Intrigued, Mark swiped right. To his surprise, it was an instant match. Liliana immediately messaged him. They struck up conversation about obscure horror movies and books. She seemed well versed in the macabre. There was undeniable chemistry between them. After several nights of non-stop messaging, Liliana suggested they meet in person. She insisted on a suitably spooky rendezvous point, an abandoned mansion on the edge of town rumored to be haunted. Against his better judgment, Mark agreed. There was something magnetic about this mysterious girl that pulled him in. When the night arrived, Mark drove out to the decrepit old mansion past overgrown fields. Under the full moon, the boarded windows and peeling paint gave off a sinister vibe. He parked out front and headed up the creaky porch steps. The front door opened before he could knock. "Welcome," Liliana's voice greeted from the darkness within. Mark entered the dust-covered foyer. His unease grew as Liliana emerged from the shadows. She looked just like her photos, but even paler in the moonlight. Her green eyes seemed to glow faintly. "Isn't it wonderfully creepy?" she murmured, moving closer to Mark. He nodded, words failing him. She was striking up close, but something about her was deeply unsettling. They walked into an old parlor where moonbeams filtered through moth-eaten curtains. Liliana sat on a worn velvet sofa and beckoned Mark to join her. As he did, a sense of foreboding washed over him. This girl gave off an aura of unnatural coldness. When Mark tried to ask her questions, Liliana pressed one icy finger at his lips. "Let's not speak just yet," she whispered. "I want to show you the true power of this place." She grasped Mark's hand firmly. Her skin was shockingly cold and caused him to shiver involuntarily. Mark tried to politely pull away, but Liliana's grip was vice-like. She led him upstairs into a bedroom, where the full moon shone brightly through a large window. Strange symbols were etched into the dusty floorboards. Liliana positioned Mark in the center and began chanting in a language he didn't recognize. Mark demanded to know what was going on. Liliana ignored him, continuing her bizarre chant, which seemed to make the air hum with electricity. Mark's limbs began to tingle and go numb. He was terrified but unable to move or make a sound. Liliana stopped her ritual and flashed Mark a sinister grin. "You're mine now," she purred. Mark tried to protest, but only managed a strangled gurgling. He was paralyzed. Liliana forced him to lie down on the filthy floor as an unnatural weakness consumed his body. From then on, Mark was trapped, a prisoner in his own body. Liliana kept him hidden away in the abandoned mansion. Each night she appeared, her shadowy presence filling Mark with dread. He was helpless as she murmured strange things in his ear, her cold breath raising goosebumps on his skin. Day and night blurred together as Mark languished alone, except for Liliana's brief, terrifying visits. His paranoia grew. She seemed to feed off his fear, like it gave her a twisted form of life force. Mark began to suspect this ghostly girl was not human. Weeks passed without Mark seeing sunlight or eating real food. He could feel his sanity slipping. The only thing keeping him alive was the faintest flicker of hope that he might one day escape. That hope was nearly snuffed out completely when Liliana vanished without warning or explanation. In her absence, the icy paralysis slowly began melting away from Mark's muscles and mind. After days of struggle, he managed to stand on trembling legs and stumbled his way out of the mansion that had been his prison. He blinked in the daylight, feeling reborn. But Mark was scared, his psyche permanently damaged by the horrors Liliana inflicted. He never recovered the weeks of memories lost to that endless nightmare. Mark didn't care to know what Liliana really was or why she chose him. Mark deleted all dating apps, unwilling to take any more risks. He learned the dangers of letting curiosity blind you to red flags. The realm of darkness that Liliana opened had left a permanent mark on his soul. He would carry the weight of what happened in that decrepit mansion for the rest of his life, a cautionary reminder echoing in his mind. Beware the darkness inside darkened souls.